Everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
Welcome back to the program. Today we're talking about your home and in particular the roof over top of your home, whatever kind of home that may be, and how to protect the investment that the roof represents in your home. In studio with us from Interprovincial Roof Consultants is the boss. Sean Lang is in studio. Sean, we talked about some of the services that Interprovincial Roof Consultants perform, but walk us through the process. Now suppose I'm on the Strata Council, and we've been having our regular little meetings lately, and we're starting to get complaints, and enough of them are beginning to come through to us that a pattern is forming, and we likely have roof issues. I heard about that guy on the radio, and I think we should call him because we don't know much about roofing. So time to get a pro in. What can you do for these people, and what variety of services would you offer that Strata Council looking for some professional input?
Well, the first thing I do is have a conversation with them on the phone when they call. It's not just simply send me your address and I'll give you a quote. I want to know a little bit about the project and a little bit about the history of what's been going on there. Whether it's the property manager that contacts us or the president of the strata or the representative from the strata, because it can be either one. A lot of times there's self-managed stratas where they have no property manager.
Right, that's true.
So we'll discuss, what's going on with the project. They'll say, well, we've had a lot of leaks and we really don't know what's going on, just like you said. So we can offer a condition reporting service where we'll come out and we'll review the roof, go up on the roof and physically walk the roof, whether it's sloped or flat, and take a bunch of pictures and basically assess it and let them know, report back to them with a document that
they know they've got problems. Here's what your problems
here's
actually
your proof.
are.
Yeah, here's your proof. So we're not just going to come back and say, you need a roof, it's going to cost you X.
Right.
Sign here. We give them a document that they can actually read, and it might take a while. Some of them can be 100 pages if it's a very lengthy and broken up project. It depends on the project. But it'll tell you everything about it, and then by the end of reading that, you know exactly what you've got and you know exactly where you got to go with it. So the stratas will, sometimes the property manager will distribute that document through the whole strata. Sometimes only the roofing committee will review that document and they'll make a judgment call and move forward or not, depending on what it says.
In that original document, the assessment of the problem, you're right, you do have a problem, and specifically here's what it is, and here's how it needs to be fixed. Do you attach any costs at that point?
Yeah, when we do our full condition report, we give them budget figures, and we give them a timeline too.
Okay.
So basically, if we figure the roof is good for 3 years, we'll give them a budget that in 3 years it might cost this much to do it.
I see. Okay.
And we can also break it out per building. If there's 20 buildings in a complex, we could give them, and let's just say there's 20 buildings of 3 different kinds. And that's typically what happens in a townhouse complex. The builder will build a building A, a building B, a building C, and then he'll repeat that 20 times. So we can give them a cost per type of building, and then it can be applied to the whole complex. So if they wanted to carve the complex up due to funding, sometimes the complex is built in phases, so you might have 20 buildings built in 1 year, and then the original developer built the next 20 buildings the following year, and then the next 20 buildings the following year after that. So the third phase isn't ready for replacement yet, but the first phase is. So they want to know the cost per phase in that case, right? So we'll lay it all out in very easy to understand terminology. We don't try to baffle-gab people. Roofing has a whole bunch of silly terms that a lot of people wouldn't even really want to pay attention to. So we try to speak to the everyday person in our reviews. Even though it may be an architect or an engineer that's going to read it, it may be a single building owner who just happens to own a building and he just happens to want to know what's going on with his building. So it's written in very understandable terms. We can vary the depth of that document as well. So, for instance, on a 20-building townhouse complex where we have to go up and down a ladder 20 times at least, go up and down and walk all over 20 individual buildings, basically, the cost of that report to do a full condition report could be expensive. If you only want a light review and you don't need the budget figures, you just kind of want to know where you're at, you want a hint, we can do a lighter, what we call a health check review. And that's a much quicker review. It doesn't have as much information. It doesn't have all the budget figures. But again, you can look at that report and you can get a very good idea of where you're at with your roofing. Okay, so there is different levels depending on how much they want to spend. If a person was to go with a health check in the beginning, we may indicate on that health check we suggest you get a more in-depth review, meaning that we find that your roof is pretty much needing replacement immediately.
It's a little unhealthy.
Yeah, whether it's absolutely needing replacement right away, we won't even suggest a further review. We'll just say you should get a spec written.
Right.
I'm not going to ask somebody to get a full condition report if they already know their roof is no good.
Exactly.
There's no point. I don't need to do the extra work for nothing.
So does that happen from time to time, Sean? Somebody calls you up and we know we have a problem.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We just need to we need to fix it.
Yeah, we can jump in at any time.
Okay.
So if the owners know the roof is in need of replacement, and quite a few do, they're on top of it.
Yeah.
We can jump right into the specification writing stage. And in that stage, again, we'll have a conversation on the phone. What are you thinking? Where do you want to go? When do you want to do this? Then I would go out and I would actually physically review the roof, go up on the roof. If we don't have any information, then I have to take all the information, drawings, measurements, tons of pictures. If it's a flat roof system, I've got to take a core sample because I have to know what the membrane is that's on there.
Right.
I have to know how thick and what kind of insulation is on there. I need to know what the substrate is, meaning the deck that it's built on.
Okay.
Because when I design a new roof system, I have to at least match the insulation that's there. Possibly we'll upgrade it. Possibly we'll put a sloped insulation package to defer or direct water to the drains better than what's there if it's pooling water. So these are things that I simply can't get this information through a phone call. I need to go there and actually review the roof.
Right. Now, if let's skip ahead to the scenario where the problem is obvious. We have a problem. We don't need someone to come along and tell us we know that part. Now we need to get it fixed. So interprovincial roof consultants, then the consultants part really kicks in. This is where you become the agent for the owners.
In a sense, the property manager is typically always the agent.
We're
just always the advisors, always the consultants.
Right.
And what we do is we basically, after reviewing the roof, taking all the information we need, we draft a document. And I've got one here to show you. And I wanted to bring in, I've got
This is really interesting. Sean has two documents with him. One is 2 pages, and the other one is bound by one of those clips. It's so thick, I would estimate probably 35 to 40 pages anyway. So the skinny little one is not an interprovincial roof consultant's document.
It is not.
The very comprehensive looking one, however, is.
Yeah, this is one of our specifications that actually I recently wrote for a project. And this is the scope of work that a roofing contractor supplied the owners prior to us becoming involved in the project, but it's for the same project.
Okay, so one roofer says this 3-pager is all you're going to need, and you should hire me, and I'll take care of your problem.
It's 3 pages, but 1 page is exclusions. So it's all the things he's not going to be responsible for.
Okay.
Right. So it's really only 2 pages, and it's itemized to some degree. He does talk about, what he's going to tear off the roof, and he's going to vacuum the gravel off the roof and such. But he doesn't really get into detail about all the things that he's going to do. For instance, for his vents, he has 1 line which has about 6 or 7 words in it to talk about the venting. In our specification, we have 3 full pages that talk about the venting. So that's a comparison to the depth and the detail that's involved in a properly written specification versus a scope of work that a roofer will give you to get the job out of you.
So once you do this massive specification report, you submit it to the owners, and they approve it. And then what happens next? You put it out to tender, and it gets bid on, right?
Well, you missed one small step there. They don't just approve it. They review it, and they discuss it. And we might discuss it on the phone. We might even have another meeting to discuss what we've written.
Especially if it's a big-ticket project.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we are basically writing instructions to tear the roof off of a building and put a new roof on. The owners want to, depending on how in-depth they want to be. Some don't really care. Just do it. I don't care. Some want to know every detail. And I've had some projects where an owner was an engineer and he's gone over every line in the specification, or an architect. And I'm happy for them to do that. I learn from it sometimes when they do find things in there, and they ask me questions about it, and I can explain why I've written the thing a certain way, because those individuals may not be well versed on roofing.
Okay.
They're very good at designing a building. They're very good at being an electrical engineer, but that doesn't mean that they're a roofer,
right,
or that they have experience with roofing.
Fair ball.
So we ask them to review it, and we give them a draft version of the specification. They'll go through it. We expect them to provide us with any changes that they want, any clarifications they want. If they want us to specify where the roofers can park and put their bins, we could write that in the specification.
Oh, right.
If we don't want them using the elevators for anything in a building, we can write that in the specification.
Right.
So all these,
and some of these details you just don't think about when you're putting together a spec sheet, because you're more concerned about the technical details rather than who's going to use the elevators. Or
well,
not.
I do think about all those things, but sometimes the owners have things that they know of that I might not know.
Of course,
right?
of course. So once you've negotiated a final draft of that document, is then it available to be bid upon?
Once we get the go-ahead from the owners, basically they're giving us the authorization to proceed to put it out to tender, meaning that they're good with what we've written. We've made the changes that they like. It may go back and forth 2 or 3 times.
Of course.
So yes, negotiation is a pretty good term, although I'm not negotiating with them. I'm simply accommodating them. I'm making this work for them within the guidelines that I'll work to, because there's minimums I won't go below. So within our guidelines and our expectations of a good quality roof system, we're willing to move parts of the specification to the owner's requirements.
Okay.
We will not go below those, though. It's important that I say that, because I will not make accommodations or concessions on a project simply for the sake of saving money. I hate the term value engineering, because to me you're not value engineering when you start to carve away at a building at what could protect it. We write the specifications not to, let's just call it Cadillac standards, and not to Chevette standards, but to a Camaro standard, or to a higher end Z28 standard, let's just say.
Okay.
I hope people understand this Chevrolet model. But I'm above middle of the road is what we try and aim for.
Okay.
So they're getting a very good roof system, but they're not spending a fortune for it, because you don't need to.
It's just getting the best bang for the buck.
Exactly.
Isn't it? Right.
Exactly. Because you're going to replace it anyways in 20 to 25 years.
Typically, Sean, when you say, okay, we're together on the draft, now we all are agreed on the specifications, the way this project needs to be built. When you put it out to tender, how many competing bids are you prepared to accept?
We usually go with 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we usually invite 5 contractors to bid on a project, and if we are given the instructions to choose those 5 contractors, which is what I prefer, they'll all be well suited for the project. So we wouldn't put a contractor in a group with other contractors who is either more capable or less capable. So they're all equally capable of doing that project, and we do that. 1, so that no matter who gets picked, we know it's going to be a good project.
Right.
2, it's very easy to choose. Low bidder gets the job, unless there's an error on the bid or something. But basically, if the low bidder's submission is good and there's no errors and it's properly signed, we can move on to the finalization of the contract.
But this is why you spent so much time dickering on the details of that report in the first place to everyone's satisfaction, so then all the people who are bidding on exactly the same set of specifications.
Yes, but even though we ask for certain things very clearly in the specification as far as the pricing that we want them to supply, or the indications, like in our specification we ask them to put down how many men are going to be on site,
right?
How many crews in total, because sometimes when you have multiple buildings you might have 2 crews, 3 crews, each with 4 men.
And there's vehicles and cranes and dumpsters, and I mean it gets big real fast, doesn't it?
But even though we're very clear about that, sometimes contractors will not put in the right information in the right way. We might ask for pricing on a certain item. They'll think we mean the whole project for that item, and they put in the wrong price. So 4 contractors are saying it'll cost $5 for this, and this one contractor is saying it'll be $3,000. Well, he obviously got it wrong. He didn't understand the question.
Right.
So in that case, that might disqualify them. So when even though all the contractors are equal, if he did make a mistake of that kind on the tender form, he could be disqualified.
Okay, but wait a second now. You got all this stuff going on. You got all these professional roofing organizations competing vigorously for this big job, and that guy on the Strata Council still wants his brother-in-law to be included. So how does that work?
That could be a tough one, and depending on how much power that person has within the strata. Sometimes we run into a strata where price is the only issue. There is no other issue. Nothing else matters.
Lowest price
it's
is
just price.
Sure.
So we'll go and we'll put together a specification. It's 40 pages. It covers everything. We've got all kinds of clauses in here that protect the owners. And they decide that all 5 prices that we brought back to them are too high.
Okay.
They're industry standard. I mean, our specifications are not over the top, as I just explained. So this is an industry standard for a proper specification.
With reputable companies.
With reputable contractors that are fully qualified and capable of doing the job to RCABC standards or better.
RCABC is the Roofing Contractors Association of British Columbia, by the way.
Yeah, and they set some standards that we like to follow as a minimum.
Okay.
So we've covered all the bases here, and we're getting some decent pricing to the owners based on the market. But Johnny comes along and he's got a pickup truck and he knows how to put a shingle on a building, and he can do it for half the cost.
Right.
Well, okay, all these guys that are professional and do this for a living and they have 100 men working underneath them are putting the job price at $100,000, let's just say, but Johnny can do it for 50. Johnny might be doing some shortcutting.
You think, huh?
Yeah, maybe. The quality of his work may be substandard.
A little slipshod?
Yeah. He's banking on getting away with something.
Right.
Because the material cost may not even be that low. So how is he getting this done? So we come into situations where these questions come up and these recommendations from a certain owner come up where they want their brother's, friend's, uncle's, mother's roofing company to do the job. And it can be a tough battle, and sometimes if they do push and they do insist that it goes that way, we'll simply back out of the job.
You just have to walk away.
Oh yeah, I don't want to. It becomes very ugly. It's not just that it's babysitting at that point because they don't understand the specification, they don't understand the requirements, they've never done an inspected job, they don't get it. And there you get the belligerent roofer who's been doing it for 30 years, and we run into these guys, but he's been doing it the wrong way for 30 years.
Or he's been doing it for 1 year 30 times and hasn't exactly evolved with the
industry. Exactly. He doesn't know the latest and the greatest ways of doing things. So it becomes very challenging, and in some cases it's just not worth the money to do it.
Because it's all about standards, isn't it? And maintain and reputation.
And quality at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Sean Lang is president of Interprovincial Roof Consultants. You can check them out online at iprc.ca. This is Experts on Call on CIAL 650 with more still ahead. Stay with us.
This is Experts on Call on CIAL 650.